Hey, it's been a week since I made a video in the hospital which 20,000 people have viewed, and I've had loads of overwhelming messages from people. I'm just so grateful. And people have been following up asking me what's it like now. So I thought I'd show you. About something like 4 days ago, I was moved with my wife into a quarantine center in Pasir, and 3 times a day food arrives like this. And so this is kind of the big thing in the day when something new comes in from the outside. Other than that, we don't really see people. And once I'm back inside, I can take the mask off again. Compared to hospital, I feel incredibly lucky to be here. There's a balcony, and there are these wonderful, huge heron birds that rest out there. Next door, I have a neighbor called Floris. Say hi to Floris. Hi. We just met yesterday. He's from Netherlands. And yeah, there are these huge birds in the trees which are like 70 centimeters wingspan across, and they make quite a lot of noise. And of course, for them, life is just carrying on, and it's kind of nice to see, that nature is just carrying on. It's just ignoring what's happening to us as human beings. At the moment, there's nobody out there in Pasir Park. There's one person on a bike. In the mornings, it's really nice to see people out there with their dogs and walking and things like that. Anyway, the most common question I've had since I came in is, what's the food like? So I guess you could see from the pack there. I'll just kind of do a sort of unboxing of it for you. Bits of laundry here. I've been washing the small number of clothes I've got every day. So this is kind of fairly typical of the food that we've been getting. I'm going to have to put the phone down for a second here. So it's fairly the food in the morning is fairly simple for breakfast. We usually get something like some noodles and stuff. This is actually quite sophisticated for lunch here. So you get sausage, got some chili sauce, and some, what's that, hash brown thing, and some spaghetti. So basically this is spaghetti. This is a Western one, right? Up until now it's always been more sort of generic Asian food. So that's the most common question I get. The other question that people have been asking me is to sort of describe the process of what happens, and I described something of that when I went into hospital about what was actually happening inside the hospital room. But just for anyone who didn't see that, perhaps I'll just run back over the story from the beginning. So about something like the 15th of April, something like that, 3 weeks ago roughly, I got a cold. I went to the doctor, got some medicines. He just told me it was a cold, and I seemed to get better. The following weekend I got a fever, and I went back to the doctor. He thought it was just flu, but then I noticed I'd lost my sense of smell, and I'm just beginning now to get my sense of smell back. So I lost my sense of smell around the 25th, 26th of April. It's now something like 10 days later, and this morning I've been saving in the fridge here. We have a fridge in the room, and it was an orange. It was my wife peeling an orange earlier on at home that made me realise I'd lost my sense of smell. And I've been saving this orange here to kind of do a test for when I can properly eat it. This morning my wife did have an orange, and it smelled definitely like orange. I could detect it. But interesting enough, she's now lost her sense of smell. So she was able to smell at the beginning, and then she's lost it further into the progress of the thing. So I've been reading online. I mean, it's only about 10 days since the sort of this loss of smell thing has been recognized widely, and it seems like the scientists are starting to figure out that those spiky bits on the outside of the coronavirus thing, apparently they kind of lock into some of the cells in your nose lining, the endothelium or whatever it's called inside your nose, and that's why you lose your sense of smell. I just find it amazing that these things, I don't know if you've looked up, but they're kind of 100 nanometers across, these little blobs, and so you could put 500 of them side by side and they would still only be the width of a human hair. It seems just unbelievable that in 12 weeks something so small as that has caused this sort of world catastrophe. Anyway, so going back to my story, I lost sense of smell, went back to the doctor. They took me in to be tested. I've described that process in my first video, but I wanted to share with you what happened after that. So once it came back positive, then they called me, the Ministry of Health called me and basically said, we're going to send an ambulance for you. And actually, that part, I've realised on all of this experience that it's the transferring between places, that's the bit that's kind of really disturbing, and it's the bit that's really unexpected. So when I opened the apartment door, the door of the HDB where we live, and there's this guy dressed up like in out of a zombie film or something. I mean, it felt incredibly real. and then being taken into the hospital with all this sort of protocol where they clear the hallways and things. And it all seems like, you know, a massive fuss, and it is, you know, and that's happening for each individual patient. Then I was in that isolation ward, and then actually coming out of the isolation room after about 5 or 6 days, that was really complicated. Like, I had this whole protocol where I had to go and have a shower, I had to change into fresh clothes that they gave me, and then I had to stand there in the room without touching anything. And a nurse kind of came in and sort of swabbed down the stuff I was taking, and it was all sealed in a bag and like double bagged and stuff. And then I didn't really know what was going to happen, and they said, okay, the ambulance is here. So actually all the nurses and the doctors came out. Thank you everyone at SGH in Ward 68. You guys were absolutely amazing. Really appreciate you looking after me. Thank you also to everyone at the tracing unit at Ministry of Health. I still don't know where I picked this up from, but I know that you're looking through this stuff in the background as well. I got into the corridor, and all the nurses came out and sort of waved me goodbye, and then we sort of went down in the lift to the ambulance. I was quite surprised that it actually was more like a minibus than an ambulance, and there was kind of about 8 or 10 of us in there, and none of us knew where we were going. The driver didn't say a word, which is kind of slightly spooky, but I think he was really hot and uncomfortable. He'd got this whole suit on, and I think he'd had to turn the aircon off in the minivan so it didn't circulate the air. So he's kind of got driving along with one hand, he's got like a fan to try and keep him cool. And eventually we kind of went across Singapore, and we ended up here in Pasir at this place called The Resort, which is, some of you might know, is a kind of family-oriented holiday resort. So once we were then kind of checked in and told, you know, go to this room. Most people are sharing rooms, I think, here. I'm sharing with my wife, so that's great, means we've got company. But a lot of people are here, and we're all here for a sort of indeterminate period. What happens in the hospital is they were taking a test, either a saliva test, which is fine, you just spit into a tube first thing in the morning, or they were doing throat swabs, which are not very pleasant, but it's not too bad. Here, and they were doing those every other day, so in the hospital they were doing a test every other day to see how I was doing. Here in the quarantine facility they only do tests every 4 days, so the deal is you have to get 2 negative tests in a row to get out. So the way it works is they come round and they do the nasal swab test here. So they stick this brush, a tiny little thin brush, but it's about that long. It goes an amazing distance into your nose, and it's really quite unpleasant. And luckily I was warned by a doctor friend beforehand. You know, a lot of people who are not used to doing these tests sort of follow the line of your nose and they stick the brush upwards, because that's what logically you think that's where your nose goes. Actually your nose goes, the cavity goes back into your face, so the thing to do is if it goes in horizontally it hurts a lot less, and they do it on both sides, so that's pretty unpleasant, but it's fairly quick, but it is unpleasant, a sort of burning sensation as it goes in. So the deal is that the results will, from that, it's a sort of DNA test, so that will take about 12 or 14, 24 hours to do. They don't come back and tell you the result. If the result is positive, in other words, if I've still got the virus, then I have to stay here for another 4-day cycle. If the result is negative, then they come back the next day and do a second test. And if you get 2 negatives in a row, then you get to leave. And there's this whole protocol with leaving where you have to bag up all your stuff and you have to get a taxi to take you right home. And I'm not sure how that's going to work now with all the new lockdown conditions here in Singapore. I assume that there are still taxis working out there. Not sure. I guess I'll figure that out when we get there. Anyway, once again, as with my first video, you can tell I'm feeling much better. You can probably hear from my voice compared to the first video. I feel a lot better. I don't really have much of a cough anymore. My wife is very tired. I sense that she's fighting the virus still. There's some kind of reports that I've been reading online saying that it's several weeks while your body kind of ramps up building antibodies to the virus, and ultimately it's those that actually destroy the virus inside you. So I won't test negative until my antibodies have kind of mopped up all of those, you know, virus bits inside me. And that might take some time, so I might be here for, you know, I might leave in 2 or 3 days time, or it might be a week or even longer while I'm still here. I do want to be clear because I don't want to infect anybody, and I'm just very relieved that all the people who went into quarantine after I'd contacted them before I came in, they're all clear, so so that's a huge relief. Anyway, thank you again to Ministry of Health for organising this so effectively, for keeping us all safe. It's hard to believe until this really affects your life how serious this thing is. You know, I've been watching on TV as the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson went down with this virus. I've noticed that he's not been making public appearances the last few days. You know, up until 2 weeks ago, he was still stupidly shaking hands with people and things like that, despite all the advice. And now I guess he's suffering for it. I do hope he comes out of that okay, because it is extremely hard to believe how serious this thing is. I had it very, very mildly, but there are people dying from this. So even if you are okay yourself, you know, other people are at risk. Anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of the process. I probably won't make another one of these videos now. I'm hoping to kind of just get on with life like everybody else. Not quite sure what kind of a world I'm going to be going back into. I guess everyone is feeling that way, wherever you are in the world, locked down. I hope that you and your family are safe. Wash your hands and take care. Bye for now.